Welcome to the Egg Carrier. I'm Chris Kale, and we're about to do an interview with Sonic director Eddie Lebron, just for your entertainment here on location, on set, in the Egg Carrier itself. Tell us a little bit about Sonic and give us a bit of the story.
Sonic. Well, the fan film is essentially a prequel to the first game, kind of the events leading up to the first game. We don't delve too deeply into the origin story of where Sonic comes from. More so the beginnings of the Robotnik and Sonic quarrel. You know, the events leading up to uh, the ongoing duel between Robotnik and Sonic through all the games. In terms of story, the film is pretty simple since we didn't want to get overly complex because essentially Sonic is not a overly complex story. So, in a nutshell, Robotnik is trying to take over the world, just like in the games, and he's going up against the president and his gun members. So it's kind of a combination of Sonic Adventure and the first Sonic game, and as he's taking over the world and going through all these obstacles, he's eliminating all wildlife from South Island, and from the ashes rises Sonic, ready to save the world. So it's essentially the first game with more of a I don't want to say super realistic take, but more of a grounded take.
Why did you choose to go with the realistic interpretation of Sonic and the scenery and all that?
It was because it was something different, but not too foreign. A lot of Sonic fans are afraid of change to Sonic. They want him to be short and fat, and with the classic design, which I can understand. I'm a Sonic fan. If it was animated, he would be what he is, classic Sonic, the way he was. Being that it's live action, you have to kind of adapt to it in a faithful way. You don't have to delve too far from it. It's the ultimate balancing act, and I feel that if I was able to get Sonic to work in live action in a way that fans would accept and believe in the product as much as I do, then we would have something that no one would ever realize could work. No one thinks a live action Sonic could work. I've had this idea since I was like 13, which was it's funny because I know my producer David has had the idea since his mid-teens too. There's many ways to go with a live action Sonic, so we feel that this is probably the most balanced live action take on Sonic.
Jaleel White makes his triumphant return as a blue blur. How in the world did you get him to do Sonic?
Getting him could have been a lot easier than the actual situation was presented to us. He was the opportunity to get in touch with him and to work with him came through a mutual a client that we worked with on a earlier gig. I said, "Oh, I'm doing a Sonic film. I would love to get Jaleel, but it's not going to happen." And he's like, "Oh, I can get you Jaleel. I can get Jaleel." I'm like, "Really?" And within 3 weeks, he had Jaleel's manager's number, and I called and I made the offer, and I pitched him what we were doing, and they were totally into it. I realized, and later on in hindsight, that there are other easier ways to get Jaleel. For example, calling SAG in their talent line. If you call SAG, they give you the number to any actor's agent, any management, anybody you want that's with SAG. So I'm pretty sure that our client actually ended up calling up SAG. What's Jaleel White's manager's number? And that would have been much easier on us. But ultimately, it was through a client. He recommended. He just got us the number. He got us the number from, I don't know how, but I'm assuming he just called SAG.
DJ Hazard as Robotnik was a brilliant choice. How did you find him and what sold you on him?
I worked with DJ Hazard on my first feature as a DP. Not my first feature, but the first feature I was hired to do as a DP. I always shot my own stuff and my own features. This was the first time which I was being hired exclusively to be a director of photography on a feature that wasn't my own. And he was in the lead. It was a film called Muttnik, in which he played a serial killer who killed people who hurt animals. So, if you microwaved a dog, he would end up microwaving you or roasting you because that's how you killed the animal. And that was my first time working with him. He was a very charismatic, very dark, brooding type guy. The live-action Robotnik is a very tall order to fill. I mean, the closest we saw was the 2006 Sonic the Hedgehog, and that was probably the best realistic Robotnik there could be. but I felt DJ was probably, in terms of physicality, in terms of acting, in terms of screen presence, I felt that he was the best of everything, the best of all aspects. So I reached out to him to see if he was interested, and he was, and essentially we got him. And it was quite, crazy exactly how good he is at Robotnik in terms of capturing his intensity and his feet, his just the chills that he can send down your spine by talking to you, which hasn't been captured in Robotnik since Sonic Sat AM. That's the last time we saw a genuinely scary, frightening Robotnik, and I knew that was going to be the Robotnik we needed to bring into this kind of real world take on Sonic. We actually considered various actual known actors. I remember the name of Kane Hodder was tossed around a bit. He's known for playing Jason in a nice chunk of the Friday the 13th movies. He was an option that was presented to us that could have worked. But then again, is he really fitting as Robotnik? Even though he's known in the horror community, is he really the type of guy you want playing Robotnik? And we played with so many options, but it was obvious that DJ was an unknown to a certain extent. Well, he is an unknown, but definitely, the Robotnik to go with.
What other characters should we expect to see in the flick? Friends, enemies, etc.?
In terms of Roblox, a lot of the known Batniks are in there. We kept it to essentially the most well-known ones. And if you follow the film, you know that we got the Motobug, we got the Buzz Bombers, we got the E-Droids from Sonic Adventure. So, we kept the enemy list, very to the bare essentials of the most well-known. We kept it very simple, very to the point, because we didn't want to overcomplicate Sonic, because overcomplicating Sonic is just essentially an oxymoron. Why overcomplicate something that's meant to not be complicated? Because it's Sonic the Hedgehog. Nature versus technology.
Are you going to show the crazy scenery from the games, like the corkscrews, checkerboards, loop-de-loops?
There are going to be nods to the games visually, since we're leading up to the first game and the events that are preceding it. In the film, we present the first game as, what if the first game occurred in this real-world setting? This is essentially a prequel to what that game would be. So you're going to see various visual nods and various visual, I guess, Easter eggs to, what comes in the first game. And I'm pretty sure a lot of fans are going to be extraordinarily happy with what we show in the movie.